My daughter refused to push my wheelchair, so I walked out of her life forever. Before we get into the story, tell us in the comment section where you are watching from. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave your honest review. I remember the moment as if it were sealed in time. The sunlight poured through the lace curtains in the living room, soft and golden, like a memory trying too hard to feel warm. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I was already dressed, my navy blue shawl draped neatly over my shoulders, silver earrings fastened, makeup carefully applied with trembling hands. I had spent an hour getting ready. I wanted to look nice for my daughter. You see, that evening was important. Julia, my only daughter, was being honored at her company's gala. Regional Director of the Year. A huge accomplishment. I was proud of her. Lord knows I've always been proud, even when she didn't make it easy to be close. I waited by the door in my wheelchair, purse on my lap, hands folded to keep them from shaking. My heart raced, not because I was nervous about the gala, but because, secretly, I was just excited to spend the evening with her. We didn't do that often anymore. Life had gotten in the way. It always does, doesn't it? I heard her heels before I saw her, the sharp click of confidence echoing through the hallway. Julia swept into the room like a storm. Phone to her ear, designer bag slung over one arm, car keys jangling. She looked beautiful, radiant in a long emerald dress that hugged her tall frame. But her face was pinched with irritation. She didn't even glance at me. No, tell Roger to handle the figures. I'm already late, she snapped into the phone. No, I don't care. Just fix it. Then finally, she looked at me, just for a second. You're ready? I nodded, smiling the way mothers do when they're trying not to burden their children. Of course, just waiting on you. She sighed. A long, heavy sigh, like my presence had just made her shoulders heavier. Mom, listen, she said, lowering her voice and turning away from the phone. I don't think tonight's the best night for this. For what? I asked. My smile faltered. Bringing you, it's complicated. There's stairs and people, and it's not really accessible. I can't be worrying about managing your chair while networking. She was already turning back to the door. You understand, right? No, I didn't, Julia, She cut me off. It's not personal. I just need one night without all this, okay? I'm already dealing with enough. My lips parted, but no sound came out. My throat tightened. I watched as she grabbed her keys, slung her bag over her shoulder, and headed toward the door. I'll be back late. There's leftover soup if you're hungry. The door shut behind her with a soft click. And that was it. I sat there in silence. The clock ticked. The golden light that once felt like a blessing now fell harsh across the room, illuminating the empty chair beside me. She didn't see it, but I was crying. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. The kind of tears that come when your heart realizes something before your mind can catch up. I wasn't invited. I wasn't needed. I was a burden. And that was the moment something inside me cracked open, not shattered, not broken, but split just enough to let something new in, something strange, something powerful. Resolve. I looked down at my legs. Useless, they'd called them. Not fully paralyzed, but weak, damaged from the stroke that had turned my world upside down 2 years earlier. But I had been working. In secret. Slowly. Painfully. Physical therapy Julia didn't know about, quiet steps behind closed doors when she was at work. I rolled to the mirror near the hallway and stared at the woman I had become. The shell. The shadow. And then I stood. It hurt. Every muscle screamed. My knees wobbled, and my hand shot out to steady myself on the dresser. But I didn't sit back down. I stood. And then I took one step, then another. And I cried again, not because I was sad, but because I realized something far more painful. She hadn't believed in me. She saw my chair, not my strength. She saw my need, not my effort. But I was still here, still standing. I didn't sleep that night. I packed a small bag, a few clothes, some cash, an old photo album, nothing else. I left the wheelchair by the front door, like an exoskeleton I no longer needed. At sunrise, I walked, slowly, carefully down the street and disappeared into a new life. I didn't leave a note. She had made her choice, so I made mine. For years, I had given everything to everyone. I was the dependable mother, the strong wife, the model employee, and when I could no longer carry everyone else's weight, they all just walked ahead without me. But maybe they needed to, so I could learn to walk again, on my own. And that's exactly what I did. Where did I go? What did I become? Let's just say, the woman Julia thought was too weak to be seen is about to walk across a stage and take back everything she thought she had lost. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to what happened next. The road, the cabin, the nurse who changed everything. Because this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about transformation, and you won't believe what happened when my daughter finally saw me again, months later, walking without help, straight into the spotlight. Don't go anywhere. The next chapter will show you how I went from forgotten to unforgettable. I didn't have a plan. There was no grand blueprint, no carefully crafted itinerary for what came next. All I had was a small overnight bag, aching legs that trembled with every step, and a heart determined to never be invisible again. I walked until my body couldn't take another inch. The sun climbed higher, the roads grew quieter, and with every painful stride, I left behind the life where I was only ever someone's burden. Eventually, the town thinned out. Houses became fields. Concrete became gravel. And just when I thought I might collapse on the side of the road, I saw it, like something from a storybook. A small, weathered cabin nestled beneath a canopy of tall oaks. The porch was crooked. The fence had long since given up trying to stand, but it felt peaceful, safe. I didn't knock. I don't know why. Maybe I was too tired. Maybe I didn't care. I just sat on the porch and let my body fold into itself, breath shaky, limbs like jelly. That's where she found me. Her name was Mara, and she changed everything. She was in her late 50s, I guessed, short hair streaked with gray, kind eyes behind thick glasses, and a voice like warm soup on a cold day, gentle but firm. "You're either running from something," she said, stepping onto the porch with a steaming mug in hand, "or you're very, very lost." I wanted to speak, to lie, maybe, but the words came out raw, a bit of both. She didn't ask more, just handed me the mug and said, "Then let's start with the rest." And for the first time in what felt like forever, someone saw me, really saw me, without judgment, without hurry. She offered me the spare room that night. I slept like a child who hadn't known what safety felt like until it was suddenly given. I dreamed of nothing, just peace. The days that followed weren't easy. I could barely move that second morning, my legs stiff as iron rods, every muscle screaming. I expected Mara to hand me a phone and call someone to take me back, but she didn't. "If you're here, it means you don't want to be there," she said. "So the only direction now is forward." That morning, she handed me a broom, and I cleaned her porch. The next day I peeled potatoes. After that, I learned to chop wood. She never pushed, never hovered, just nudged gently, like she was holding space for me to rise at my own pace. And I did. Each chore strengthened my legs. Each task reminded me I could. One afternoon, I caught my reflection in her hallway mirror. I didn't recognize the woman staring back. I looked alive. Over dinner one evening, Mara finally asked what I was running from, and so I told her. About Julia. About the wheelchair. About the door that closed not just physically, but spiritually. She didn't interrupt. Didn't gasp or frown or offer platitudes. When I finished, she simply said, "She saw the chair. You need her to see the fire." I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I carried it with me like a riddle. That night, I sat on the porch alone, the moonlight slicing through the trees in silver beams. I looked down at my hands, calloused now from work. Strong, I was becoming someone new. But not just new. Real. A few weeks later, Mara handed me a flyer she pulled from a community board in town. "They're looking for volunteers at the local shelter. Cooking, cleaning, might be good for you." I stared at the paper. The idea of being useful again, of giving, not just surviving, sent a jolt through me. I went the next day. The shelter was noisy, warm, chaotic, full of stories. People like me. People trying. People forgotten. And in that space, I found purpose again. I became their cook, their ear, their laughter. I was no longer someone's mother, someone's wife, someone's burden. I was Grace, the woman who made the best damn chicken soup in town and listened without judging. A local newspaper did a spotlight on the shelter, just a quick story, a feel-good piece. I didn't think much of it, until the article came out and people started talking. Someone shared it on Facebook, then someone else tagged a nonprofit organization. And a week later, I got a letter in the mail. It was official. "For your service to the community and embodiment of resilience, we invite you to accept the Resilient Heart Award at our annual ceremony this fall." I read it twice, 3 times. They wanted me to walk across a stage. Walk. Oh, the irony. The tears came before I could stop them. Not because I felt seen, but because I finally saw myself. The woman in that wheelchair no longer defined me. The girl on the porch was gone. And the woman in the mirror? She was going to rise and let the whole world watch. But there's something I haven't told you yet. Something that chills me even now. Because the day I accepted that award invitation, someone else saw the newspaper article. Julia. She hadn't called in months. No texts, no check-ins. She probably assumed I had gone to a care home, or worse. But she saw the article. And I know this because 3 days later, Mara handed me the phone, her face unreadable. It's her, she said softly. I stared at the phone like it was a ghost. Julia. I answered. Her voice was cautious, controlled. Mom, is it true? That you're walking, that you're getting an award? I said nothing for a moment. Then I said, it's all true, every word. There was a long pause on the other end. Can I come see you? I didn't know what to say. After everything, after the porch, after the silence. And that, dear listener, is where things take a turn. Because what Julia did next wasn't what I expected. Not even close. Let's just say sometimes when people come back into your life, they aren't there to apologize. They're there to rewrite history. And not always in your favor. I stared at the phone in my hand long after the call had ended. Julia wanted to see me, and not just to catch up or say sorry. No, there was a quiet edge to her voice, a kind of nervous calculation, like she wasn't just reaching out to reconnect, but to reclaim. Part of me wanted to believe she missed me, that she had seen the article and realized what she had lost. But another part, the part that still remembered that porch and the silence that followed, wasn't so sure. Still, curiosity has a way of cracking open doors you swore you had sealed shut. So I said yes. She arrived 2 days later. Mara was in the garden when the car pulled up. I was in the kitchen chopping carrots for the shelter. And when I looked up through the small, dusty window above the sink, I saw her. Julia. She hadn't changed much. Designer coat, impeccable hair, her heels crunched against the gravel like they didn't belong here. Because they didn't. I met her on the porch, and for a long moment neither of us spoke. Her eyes flicked down to my legs, standing strong and steady, then back up. You look good, she said finally. I nodded. I am good. Her smile faltered. Just for a second, like she wasn't ready for me to be okay without her. We sat on the porch, just like the day everything ended. But this time, I was the one who stood tall. She was the one unsure of her place. Mom, I didn't know, she began. I didn't think you'd actually leave. I thought you were bluffing. I laughed, not out of humor, but because it was absurd. Bluffing? Julia, I had nothing. No car, no money, barely enough strength to get down the street. And you thought I was bluffing? Her face flushed. She looked down. I was overwhelmed. Work's been insane and I was just another task on your to-do list, I finished, until I stopped being convenient. Silence. She looked up, blinking back tears. I was scared, she said. Scared of watching you fall apart. Scared of how much you needed me. I didn't know how to carry that. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to. But something in her voice, it didn't feel like guilt. It felt like strategy. We talked for an hour. Maybe 2. She asked about the shelter, about Mara, about the award. All with the practiced polish of someone collecting information, not connection. Then came the twist. I've been thinking, she said, carefully sipping her tea. Now that you're, strong again, maybe you could move in with us. I blinked. Us? Me and Adam. You remember Adam, right? From the firm? We're married now. We bought a new house, big one, extra space. You would have your own suite. It sounded rehearsed, like a pitch. But my stomach twisted, not from the offer, from what was missing. There was no I miss you, no I'm sorry, no acknowledgement of the years of silence, the abandonment, the broken bond, just opportunity. I looked her in the eye and asked the question I hadn't dared until now. Why now, Julia? Why come back after all this time? She hesitated. I told you, I saw the article. I realized I had made a mistake. Or, I said slowly, you realized I'm about to walk across a stage in front of hundreds of people, with cameras and reporters and eyes on me. She stiffened. And that was all the answer I needed. Later that evening, Mara found me sitting alone in the garden, the sky bleeding pink and gold across the horizon. How'd it go? She asked gently. I didn't speak for a long moment. Then I said, she wants me back, but only now that I'm worth showing off. Mara nodded slowly. So what are you going to do? And I said something I hadn't fully accepted until that moment. I'm not a prize to be displayed. I'm not a prop in her curated life. I'm me. And I finally found that woman again. But the universe wasn't done testing me yet, because 2 days later, I got a letter. Not from Julia, from her lawyer. It was cold, formal. Apparently, after I left, Julia had filed for legal conservatorship. To protect my estate, the letter said. To ensure my assets were managed responsibly in light of my physical decline. She never mentioned that in our chat. The letter explained that now that I was functional, the conservatorship was being reviewed, but Julia was requesting shared access to my current financial affairs in the event of reconciliation. I couldn't breathe. She wasn't coming back for love. She was coming back for control. I brought the letter to Mara, her jaw clenched tighter with every word she read. This isn't about healing, she said. It's about ownership. And for the first time in my life, I felt the fire in my chest burn. Not with grief, but with rage. I wasn't going to let this happen. Not again. I had fought for my independence, walked for it, bled for it, and now I was going to protect it with everything I had. I called the award committee that night, and I asked them one simple question. Would it be possible for me to speak? Just a few minutes. When I walk across that stage, they said yes, and that's when I knew. Julia wanted to use my moment to rewrite history. But I was going to use it, to reclaim it. The night of the ceremony was only days away now. And as I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the dress Mara helped me pick out, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Not just strength, not just dignity, but power. The power to tell my story. To show the world who I was, who I had become, without shame, without apology, and without the weight of someone else's version of me dragging me back down. But as I reached for my heels, my phone buzzed. One message, from an unknown number. If you go through with this speech, you'll regret it. I froze. My hand trembled slightly, and I realized this was bigger than I thought. Someone was scared of what I might say, and I hadn't even stepped on the stage yet. The night had arrived. I stood at the edge of the stage behind thick velvet curtains, watching the audience settle into their seats. Rows of polished shoes, designer dresses, clinking glasses, and murmurs filled the grand hall. Chandeliers shimmered above their heads like 1,000 tiny suns. The ceremony was in full swing. One award after another, with warm applause echoing off marble walls. And then, my name. Tonight, we honor Evelyn Carter, founder of the Second Wind Foundation. A woman who redefined what it means to rise again. My heart pounded, but not from fear. No, this time it was resolve. The curtain parted, and I stepped forward, heels clicking, spine straight, not a tremble in my step, not a single hand helping me forward. Just me. Me. Walking across a stage I never imagined I would live to see, while my daughter sat in the crowd, eyes wide, lips parted. Her hand clutched her purse like it held the key to stopping time. She hadn't expected me to walk. She hadn't expected me to speak, but I did both. I reached the podium and looked out across the sea of faces, and I began. Thank you. This award is deeply humbling, but before I accept it, I have a story to tell. One that's not about success, but about silence. About being invisible in a room full of people. About being dismissed, doubted, and discarded. The room quieted. You could hear a pin drop. 2 years ago I couldn't walk, I couldn't bathe myself or cook a meal. I couldn't lift my arms high enough to braid my own hair. My world had shrunk to a chair and a call bell, and a daughter who looked at me like I was a burden she couldn't carry. A few people shifted uncomfortably. I didn't flinch. One day I asked her to push my wheelchair. Not far, just to the garden. She looked at her watch, muttered something about a meeting, and left. My voice cracked just a little. I let it sit. So I sat in that chair for hours, no garden, no breeze. Just the realization that love can be loud in words, but hollow in action. I took a breath, then delivered the line I had been holding for months. So I stood up, and I walked out of her life. The audience gasped, and somewhere in the back I saw Julia lower her head. It wasn't revenge, it was survival. Sometimes the people closest to you will leave you starving for the very thing they swear to give, support. And when they do, you learn to feed yourself. Mara smiled from the wings. I locked eyes with her. A silent thank you. I built the Second Wind Foundation for people like me, people who had been written off, boxed in or left behind. We give them tools, but more importantly, we give them their dignity back. Applause erupted. But I wasn't finished. Now, I need to say something else, something personal. The crowd quieted again. Tonight, I received a message. A threat, actually. Someone warned me not to speak. Gasps rippled through the crowd. They were afraid. Not of what I would do, but of what I would reveal. Because truth, when spoken aloud, makes shadows retreat. I held up a folded letter, the legal notice Julia's lawyer had sent. This is a legal document, a claim filed in my name without my consent, an attempt to control my assets when I was most vulnerable. It wasn't about love, it was about ownership. Gasps turned into stunned silence. And Julia stood up, eyes wide, lips trembling. Mom, she whispered, but I continued. But this isn't about shame. I'm not here to humiliate anyone. I'm here to tell the truth and set it free. I looked her straight in the eye. I loved you, Julia, and maybe a part of me still does, but I will no longer shrink myself to fit the story you want to tell the world. I earned this walk. I fought for it, and I own it. She sat back down, and I turned back to the mic. To anyone listening tonight who feels small, forgotten, or voiceless, let me say this: you do not need permission to reclaim your life. You are not a burden. You are a miracle in progress, and you owe no one an apology for rising. Tears welled up in the eyes of people I had never met, but they saw me, the real me. For the first time I felt it, what it meant to be whole. Not because of who came back, but because of who I refused to become again. The room rose to their feet. Applause thundered like rain on rooftops. I stepped back, breath heavy, chest full. And just before I walked off stage, I looked one last time at Julia. She wasn't clapping, but her eyes weren't angry. They were wet. Maybe for the first time she saw me too. But I didn't wait for her to chase me. This time I was walking forward, and I wasn't looking back. The next morning, I woke up to a dozen voicemails. Journalists, reporters, survivors, volunteers, even estranged families. The speech had gone viral, but the only message that stopped me in my tracks was the one from Julia. Mom, I listened to your speech again, not just the words, but the truth inside them. I'm sorry, not for what I did, but for who I wasn't when you needed me most. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I sat with the phone for a long time. Then I set it down, not to call her back. Not yet, but to breathe in the silence that no longer hurt. So here's where I'll leave you. If someone once left you behind, doubted your worth, or told you to wait until they had the time to care, don't waste another breath begging. Rise. Walk. Reclaim your place. Because you are not what they failed to see. You are everything you dared to become. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If this story touched you, helped you, or made you reflect, please hit that subscribe button. More powerful stories like this are coming, and I would love for you to be part of this growing community of healing and hope. Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Until next time, remember, your second wind is waiting. All you have to do is walk.